Welcome to Monster Chats, presented by Monster VoIP, where we share the tools, methods, and best practices that business leaders use to build new connections, strengthen relationships, and impact sales in organizations of all shapes and sizes. If you have any questions that come up during today's episode, please text them to 424-378-6966. Please welcome the founder of Monster VoIP, your host, Colin Mitchell.
On today's episode, we're going to be talking with Coach Steve. Steve and I are going to be talking about all things self-awareness and feedback related, specifically personal brand, personality type, mindset, visibility, and journey accountability. I'm Colin Mitchell, the host of Monster Chats and your founder of Monster VoIP. Steven is an entrepreneur that loves learning, sharing, and simplifying the many lessons from his own nearly 5-decade career. That includes starting and selling 2 successful 8-figure revenue tech service firms, becoming a Hall of Fame angel investor, being a coach to hundreds, most of which are entrepreneurs and change agents of all categories. Some were execs at Sony, Disney, Broadcom, and Oracle. Steve is an accomplished writer, speaker, researcher, and originator of the Self-Awareness Mastery Series 5 deep dive feedback assessments. Steve, welcome to Monster Chats. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Looking forward to talking with you and sharing some insights from a long career. I'm not always glad to tell people it's 5 decades, but it's all right. I've made a lot of mistakes. You know, people say, "Hey, how do you know that?" I say, "Well, you know, you've been around that long, you've made all the mistakes, so let me save some for you."
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, today we're going to be talking about self-awareness, personality types, and mindset. But before we jump in, just tell us, kind of from your, tell us your story from, kind of where you came from and kind of how you got to where you are today, where it all started.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, we'll go back to the beginning. Actually, why feedback has become such a core part of my coaching is I got out of high school and I was kind of a dumb kid, not knowing what to do, and working at a car wash, and some friends of mine said, "Hey, they're giving intelligence tests down at the junior college," and I said, "Oh boy, just what I need." So I went down, took the test, and afterwards a lady called me up and said, "Steve, you did amazingly well. Matter of fact, you're the first to ever ace the abstract comprehension portion." And I go, "Great, what's that?" So she said, "Well, that's one of our filters for recommending careers in technology and engineering and programming." She said, "You really should look into that." So to make a long story short, I took a crash course on programming, aced it. The instructor was so happy with me, he referred me into a Lockheed aircraft where they were in desperate need of programmers for their L-1011 program. I went there, had another test, did really well, got the job. So in a period of 3 or 4 months, I went from a dumb kid working at a car wash to a salaried employee at a major aerospace company making more money than my parents.
Oh, wow.
So from that moment forward, I couldn't wait to find out what else I didn't know about myself. I took tests. I took every personality test, every skills test. I wasn't afraid to ask people, "Hey, where could I be better?" So, my career has been, the hallmark of my career is that I'm a feedback hound, because whatever you learn, it's good. I mean,
yeah.
So, what I've discovered is 95% of feedback is either good or fixable. It's either confirms a strength, identifies a new strength you didn't know about, or it's something negative, and usually it's fixable. If you're a micromanager, hey, stop doing that. If you violate people's personal space or talk too loud or whatever, just stop doing that. So that's a little bit of sort of how it got started. And then I guess to end with, what happens, feedback gives you a sense of self-awareness, and self-awareness is sort of a confidence level that makes everything easier. It's funny, after I became fully self-aware over a period of years, I found that I stood taller, my voice was deeper, my handshake was firmer, my eye contact was better. Everybody noticed. My friends are going, "What in the hell happened to you?" And I said, "Well, I just figured out what I'm good at." I sort of went from thinking to knowing. When you think something, it's kind of tentative. The word think implies, well, maybe. But when you know who you are, I'm telling you, everything changes. And that's what I'm excited about. I really want to get people to take the time to really appreciate who they are, what they're good at, where they can improve, and where they might be out of sync. And this is what's really important. How we see ourselves and how other people see us is sort of a missing link in the overall issue of self-awareness. Too many people say, "Well, isn't it what I think of me?" No, you got to take into consideration how other people see you. So I think that's sort of the journey, how it started, and then that just led to great confidence in business and building and selling and investing. When I got into investing, but I'm sort of, I don't want to rattle on endlessly, but that's sort of how it all got started, and how I became a successful businessman in technology and got out of washing cars.
That's an incredible story. I mean, from washing cars to just taking a test and finding out something that you had no idea about yourself.
Yeah.
And
believing it. And remember, because a lot of times people get feedback and they don't necessarily believe it. I believed it. Well, first off, nobody at that time had ever called me smart. I mean, people had called me a good athlete, but nobody in my entire life had ever said, "Steve, you're smart." This lady was telling me I'm off the chart smart. Wow. And that's like, oh my God, what if she's right?
So that must have just been like a huge confidence booster.
Oh, like I said, it just, from that point forward, I was just a man of great confidence, and it was reflected. I shot up through the ranks, at this aerospace company. And actually, the only reason I left is that I loved technology so much, and the career path there was to get you out of technology and into management. And I didn't want to do that, time cards and performance reviews and stuff like that. So
you mean feedback? You didn't want to give people feedback?
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that. And to be honest, you're right. If you're out looking for feedback, you've got to be courageous enough to give it as well. But I think in that sense, I had just fallen in love with technology. I just think I had this thing. I like to figure things out. I'm a propeller head. I loved. In the old days, we used to call these things dumps. I don't know if you'd call them dumps today, but we would dig through these reports that would just show the inner workings of the machine. And I was in heaven, walking around doing my basin displacement work through the dump, trying to figure out what went wrong. So.
Wow. Okay. So I think something that I heard you say, right, is once you became, more self-aware, you became so much more confident, and people noticed that, right? Like you stood taller, your handshake was firmer. Talk to me a little bit about that transformation, and just kind of, because I think people are so against getting feedback. Maybe they don't want to know what people have to say or think about them.
Yeah.
And then, like, the other part you said is you have to actually believe it too. So talk to me about how, you became more self-aware and how that affected your confidence and that transition.
I think, again, it's this whole idea when, I've interviewed so many people over the years, because when I became an author, nobody would publish what I would write. So, but then I started interviewing people that had a bigger name than me. So I'd interview them, get quotes, and all of a sudden I get published in Software Magazine and Computer World and in various other places. So it was fun to sort of listen to people talk, and you'd say, why do you think you've been successful to date? And it's really some of the most incredibly tentative answers you've ever heard. And this whole idea that once you get a really solid understanding of what you're good at, it's reflected. Communications, only a small part of communications are the words you say. Mm-hmm. Most of it is how you say it and your body language. And if you ever want to describe what the term presence means, when somebody has presence, what you're seeing is their body language, and it's just they stand taller. Everything just reeks of confidence. They say, "Who the hell is that guy?" So
Yeah.
if you want that, then you have to be absolutely certain. Matter of fact, this I call self-awareness fully self-aware, because there's different aspects. When you're fully self-aware, it's actually a superpower. I mean, it's an X factor. Everything changed when I started my businesses and things started to go well. I got into this. Oh my God, I didn't know if I was good or lucky. So I had to drill down some additionally into various types of testing and Myers-Briggs and that kind of stuff. And I came out and I said, "Holy mackerel! I'm even better wired than I thought I was for this." So then everything just took off from there, and it was an absolute and total superpower. People around me just blew their mind that I could have such courage. And interesting, when you have self-confidence, you do things that other people think are risky, but you don't see them as risky.
Yeah.
So it's just a great sense. But now, to get feedback, so many people fear feedback, and in a way you have to be a little vulnerable to accept it, and you have to accept that you don't have all the answers. I mean, too many people today, they get an idea and they want to become an entrepreneur and they think they have all the answers. Well, trust me, you don't.
Yeah.
Even the best athletes in the world have coaches. There's a great little short clip on the internet about Bill Gates and Eric Schmidt of Google talking about how they have coaches. And Eric made a good point that we simply don't observe ourselves like other people observe us, and sometimes we need that. So I guess self-awareness is a superpower, and the opposite of that is your Achilles heel. Actually, I just submitted an article to a major outlet, and the title was "Self-Awareness: The Achilles Heel for many entrepreneurs." Because when you have it, it's a superpower, and when you don't, it's an Achilles heel. So because it's not talked about as much. Everybody's trying to motivate you, say, "Hey, to be an entrepreneur, you need to be motivated, you need to persevere, and you need to know when to pivot, you need to know how to raise money." Yeah, we got that. But there's this whole thing that if you're not self-aware, you're going to do some really dumb things. I mean, I've seen entrepreneurs who couldn't shut up. I mean, they start talking and they just walked over people. They'd get up and give a presentation. You give them 10 minutes, they talk for 30, and you literally have to push them off the stage. Who's going to invest in that? I mean, that reeks of uncoachability and stuff like that. And trust me, I have a good track record, because one of the things I insist on is that you got to be coachable, because you don't have all the answers. I don't give a damn how smart you are. You don't have all the answers.
Right. So how does a person that is not self-aware, is not good at receiving feedback, how do you take a person like that to being more open to receiving feedback and being more self-aware?
Well, as I said a minute ago, you have to be a little vulnerable. And it's funny, I've hardened over the time as a coach, because I've had to give really powerful people at big companies feedback they don't like. Actually, sometimes I've told executives at some big companies that they had these blind spots or baggage. Blind spot being something you don't know, and baggage something you know but you don't know how to fix. I've had to tell them things, and they get pissed. They immediately want to know, who said that? And I purposely designed my 360 surveys so they're anonymous for that very reason. I don't want to be able to answer the question, "Well, it was Joe."
Yeah.
It was Joe that thinks you're an idiot.
Yeah. Or it was the mass majority of your staff, right?
Yeah. So I think, first off, I think you have to let people know that you're interested in feedback, good or bad. Because I'll tell you right now, I mean, I've been a coach long enough to know that if you're not open to feedback, your career is not going to proceed as quickly as it could.
Yeah.
If you go on unaware of certain characteristics that are bothering other people, that's noise in the channel. I mean, you could be intelligent, visionary, and hardworking, and if the other person only sees you as an idiot and talking too loud and annoying, nothing's going to get through. I mean, it's just not going to work. So I'm telling you, you want that feedback. You're going to have to be a little vulnerable. You're going to have to tell people, Gary V, if you're a Gary V fan, I mean, Gary, it seems like every other video he talks about self-awareness and how important it is, and that you need to discover it, because once you have that confidence, you can go all in, and that you have to sort of create a safe space for people who can go and be honest with you. But it's tough. I mean, can you imagine walking into your boss and saying, "Hey, great presentation today, but to be honest, none of us know what the hell you're talking about."
Yeah. Or here's your baggage that we think.
Yeah. So I think we just certainly have to be open to it. But I mean, you can tiptoe into self-awareness through, taking personality tests and intelligence tests and things like that. I guess there are really 4 basic reasons we don't get the feedback we need. We don't observe ourselves very well. I mean, it's just crazy what people do, and I see it, and I tell them, and they go, "What?" We observe everybody, but we don't observe ourselves very well. Okay. And then we don't ask. I mean, actually the more you proceed in your career, who's out asking, "Hey, what do you think when you hear my name?" I mean, that's maybe a 1 in 10 type person who's out there really asking for that feedback. And then people don't give it to us, especially if you're the boss, or who's going to go into the boss and lay a bad news item on him? It's it takes some courage. And then fourthly, there are people like me who run these surveys, and a lot of people never, for example, have you ever run a 360 feedback survey?
No.
So I'm just saying, it's just something that people don't do. But I can tell you, I've never run one where there wasn't just these eye-opening discoveries. You say, "Oh my God, what?
Yeah,
they think I'm what? I do this, I do that."
So
just crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
So how do leaders, create the culture to have people create that safe space for feedback to be, more accepted, or people feeling more comfortable to provide feedback, to coworkers, leaders?
Yeah. Well, I think first off, if you want it, you have to give it. Okay. So you're going to have to find a way, whether it's 1 minute manager style or whatever, you're going to have to find a way to give feedback, both positive and constructive. Again, we're looking for constructive feedback. For feedback to be valuable, it has to be comprehensive. You can't, you can't say you're a jerk. You got to say why you think they're a jerk. It's got to be timely. It can't be last month you said. I say, what do you mean last month? And then it has to be actionable. I mean, tell me something, just because I'm 5 foot tall and I want to play in the NBA, I can't fix that. Okay. So, but if it's pretty much anything else, like I said, I say it's 90, everything is not, feedback is 95% good news or fixable, because there are very few things you can't really address. But I think generally, you have to give feedback. You have to let people know you're interested in feedback. And actually, I've seen people have meetings where they sort of insist that as you go around the table, you say something good and constructive to others. And it's interesting. That's a kind of a safe space, because everybody's been given, you got to let people know you're ready for it. And so somebody might say, "Well, listen, Steve, I really think you did a great job on that presentation. Oh, listen, I got a funny story to tell you, but just going around the table and offering that up is a great way to say something good and say something constructive.
Right.
This is funny. Back early in my career, I was on a panel discussion. So I was up there and 3 or 4 other people and a moderator. And when it was over, man, I was just a picture of confidence. I was the master of the subject. I was answering the questions. I had it all figured out. And
yeah.
Afterwards, I go out and my wife's in the audience because we were going to have lunch afterwards. And I pull her aside and I said, "Hey, honey, what do you think? Pretty good, huh?" She said, she goes, "That was awful." And I went, I go, "What do you mean awful?" She said, "You're chewing gum and you're smacking gum. Everybody could hear it." And she said, "You were tapping your foot. What song was that?" And I'm sitting there going, "What?" I'm smacking gum and tapping my foot. I mean, come on. Who's going to tell me that if it's not my wife?
Right. Yeah.
And I was just so full of confidence. But it's just a great example of how, again, we don't observe ourselves well. We need to be around people who will give us honest feedback, but constructive. I mean, we're not out trying to destroy people. We're trying to help them, and that's what I want to do. I mean, it changed my life forever, and I just want to make sure everybody understands how they can go about, gathering this feedback and this incredible. I call them aha moments. Actually, it's more like an epiphany. When you make these discoveries and you're going, "Holy mackerel!" I mean, it truly is an epiphany.
Yeah, and I think that it's opportunity to grow. It's like something to be excited about. If you're not aware of a fixable problem, then you're not aware. And once you are, then there's room for some excitement to improve and change and be a better version of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, that timeliness thing is so interesting because I love my wife, but there have been times when she'd be upset with me, and I'd try to finally figure it out, and she'd say, "Well, 2 weeks ago you did this," and I said, 2 weeks ago? Please, please. When I do something stupid, please tell me.
Right, like with the when you're
tell me now. Tell me as soon as you can, so that I can correct it. But it's just funny.
Yeah, chewing the gum was good timing for that.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? I mean, I was just so full of myself.
Yeah.
And my wife was just appalled. Oh.
She deflated you real quick.
Oh, I was lower than a snake belly on that one, man.
But I bet you never chewed gum in any speaking engagement after that.
I chew gum, and believe me, I don't have any gum in my mouth right now. I learned that lesson, and I keep my feet as still as I can because I am a fidgeter. Listen, I had ADD when I was in high school. I couldn't sit still very long. That was one of the reasons I was challenged back in high school. So.
So, all right. So we talked a lot about self-awareness, but tell me a little bit about these personality types and these tests that you've kind of, mentioned briefly.
Well, I think personality testing, I think, is a great tool. It's a little bit about, you give your input to a tool, whether it's an intelligence tool or a personality test or a skills test, and it's going to give you feedback. And I've always been intrigued with the personality test. I'm a big Carl Jung fan. I've read, you imagine, I've read his 600-page book. But I love the concept, and it was so relevant to me because the deeper I dug into this, I found out so much about myself. For example, I'm an INTJ. I'm an introvert, intuitive thinking judger. Okay. Introvert, which simply means I get my energy internally. Intuitive, my brain gathers data through the sixth sense rather than the five sense. My brain processes with a thinker preference rather than a feeler preference, and my output as a judger is structured and organized versus a perceiver who is more spontaneous and flexible. Matter of fact, one of the reasons I was a big fan of Myers-Briggs is that I'm a computer guy, so I see everything as a computer. So when I look at those 4 letters, it says, where do I get my energy? Then the next three are input, process, and output. How does my brain gather data? How do I process that data? And how do I output it? So if I were to meet you, and the first thing I would say is, okay, generally you look for the first and third letters first, because they're the most behaviorally observable. For you, or let's see, are you an introvert or an extrovert? Let me guess. Okay, you're an extrovert, so that's pretty obvious. And how do you process data? I mean, it's interesting. I think you're a thinker, but there's one of the things I've discovered, not only that there's this computer metaphor for Myers-Briggs, but there's also within each of these opposing preferences, like thinker and feeler, I'm way over on the thinker side, and I don't think you're as far over. So I mean, I think there are parts of you that make me think you might be closer to the middle. I'm so far over on thinker that I'm challenged to show any kind of EQ or any kind of sensitivity. Matter of fact, I went to my mother.
I'm actually the same way.
Really?
Yeah.
There's no doubt. There's no, once again, you're obviously a thinker.
Yeah.
But again, sometimes it's a matter of strengths and stuff. But I'm so bad on the feeler side. I'll give you an example. I was giving my mother's eulogy, and I was my normal organized self, and I had started reading this, and I guess just the emotion of the moment hit me, and I started crying. And it was uncontrollable. I mean, when there's a side of you that you don't exercise, not only are you not good at it, you're awful at it. I mean, I looked in the front row, and my wife and daughter were up there going, "Who the hell is that?"
Yeah.
I mean, I was lost, because again, if you spend so much time experiencing one side of your personality and nothing on the other side, you're really bad at it. There's a reason they call it a weakness.
Yeah. So do people that are more stronger on the thinker side, do they struggle with things like empathy and things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, strong thinkers are really they're good at IQ and bad at EQ. But it's like anything, one of the things I try to help people understand is awareness is about half of the solution about every problem. See, I know I'm not good on the EQ side. So what I'll do is, whether I'm at a movie or whether I'm having a sensitive conversation with somebody, I do try to spend some time there and try to experience that a little bit. So I think there is again, it's a preference. When you have a preference, it simply means you go there more often than not. A preference is like being right-handed. I've got two hands. I can use either one of them, but I use my right hand. I'm better at it. It's my go-to hand. If I were in a bar and I was going to go and pick up a beer, and you had to bet which hand I was going to pick it up with, you'd probably say he's probably going to pick it up with his right hand, right? So I'm just saying so a preference doesn't mean you never go to the other side, but the stronger the preference, it means less often you go to the other side, and the worse you are at it. And I think, again, that awareness, for example, I understand that I'm a reserved personality, but on subjects that I'm excited about, like right now, you see me animated and excited, and you say, well, is he really an introvert? Well, yeah, I am. It's just that, just because I'm an introvert in a personality sense, doesn't mean I can't experience an extroverted trait, especially on a topic that I really enjoy.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I think that, so being aware of where like what you're saying, being aware of what your strengths are, or which ones are more challenging for you, really help. Being aware of your personality type and which, way you prefer over which way you don't, is really beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. As a matter of fact, it helped me over time pick other leaders in my company, because I wanted people who would be complementary. Matter of fact, typing, you think of typing as sort of an individual activity, but I've actually gone into entire management teams where we create a group type. There could be 5 or even 10 people in a management team, and we would type each of them and their strengths, and collectively we would find that the company had a personality based on the collective type of the management. And it's funny, I was in one company where 9 of the 10 managers were thinkers, one feeler. And the obvious issue there was the management team properly considering the caring and sensitive and the feeler side of decisions that the company was making? So they literally included every decision that was made had to include the question, have we taken this into consideration? Because it was important. They were all in kind of agreement as to, the logical and analytical approach to things. And they needed a little EQ. They needed somebody with a more caring, sensitive view of things.
Interesting. Wow. All right, we're going to take a quick break just to tell you a little bit about what we do at Monster VoIP. We help companies improve their communication tools and help them save 30 to 50% off their current business phone bill in the process. If you'd like to learn more, you can text us at 424-378-6966. We're talking with Coach Steve, and we've talked about self-awareness. We've talked about personality types. And then Steve's going to drive it home and talk a little bit about mindset.
Oh, love mindset. Mindset has been such a big issue in my coaching that I actually wrote a paper on it. And part of my, I have this mastery series on self-awareness with these 5 assessments. And one of them is mindset. And it's one of the few tests that's run a little bit like a session with a psychologist. You read this document and you highlight in the document the areas where you think you have an issue with your mind. And then with each issue, I offer a solution to the problem. And what I did in this document is I characterized sort of 2 approaches to dealing with your mind, and that a lot of it is just your voice in your head. And I'm a big Eckhart Tolle fan, and his concept is very much that you see yourself as separate from your mind, that you disidentify with its contents. And I often, if I'm teaching a class, will tell people, hey, I'm going to reach into my head and rip my mind out, and now it's right there. So you see this, but here's me in my mind. And when you're talking with me and you have my attention and I'm fully present, I'm in the now, as Tolle would say, the mind is an observer. It doesn't even speak. It's like a cameraman at a camera shoot. He's just sitting there recording. But then all of a sudden, when you have a thought, a question, and you want to go into the past and the future, that's where your mind comes in. That's the domain of the mind. So when I go to my mind, this is what it looks like inside. I turn to my mind and we have a conversation, and then I come back to you. So again, you see me looking at you, but you don't know if I'm in my head, as they say. I'm in here talking to myself, dealing with the past and the future. So it's just a good visual, and it's a great way to look at Tolle's concept, is that the answer to pretty much everything is just to ignore the shit that's left over in there from all that crap you told yourself. You said, oh, you're so stupid, and you're this and you're that. Because Tolle knows that your mind is needy. Your mind wants to have a conversation with you because it's in there with the past and the future, and it's lonely in there. So it wants to engage with you, and it'll throw crap out at you've had thoughts. I'm sure everybody gets these thoughts like,
oh yeah,
where in the hell did that come from? Now, Tony Robbins has a great way to look at it. He says, if your mind's giving you trouble, just tell it to shut up. If it's outside of you, look how big you are. Your mind, it's still you. Matter of fact, he says, if you're really pissed, tell it to shut the F up.
Yeah.
F up, And it's so funny. Over the years, I've had a lot of people come up who didn't like to say the F word. So I had a relative that came up with a great one. He would make fun of it. Something crazy, and the mind would say something crazy like, you're an idiot. And he'd say, you're so funny. You're so funny.
It's definitely a nice way to simplify it, right?
Well, it is. And one of the things I tell you, if you want to avoid self-talk, you have to lower the tone. You know, if you say to yourself, that son of a bitch stabbed me in the back, trust me, you're going to hear that a whole bunch. Your mind's going to feed that back to you. But if you say, I'm not happy with him, I'm not happy with that person, your mind can't do anything with that, because there's two indices in there. That's the basic lookup indices into a database. And then there's the shit index, or the negative emotional index. And that's the one your mind uses to get your attention. And it will just feed you crap until it gets your attention. It'll tell you, oh, you're about to screw this up, or, oh, not again, you're going to mess this up again. I mean, it's just amazing what our minds say to ourselves. And so if you want to manage your mindset, again, I would take a mix of Tolle and Robbins. And again, to think of yourself as separate and disidentified from your mind, and understand that presence being in the moment is how you get your mind to shut up. Now, this is important. The number one way to quiet the mind, the number one way is to listen, L-I-S-T-E-N. When I give my full attention to someone like you, and I listen to what you say, or I listen to the sounds around me in nature, birds chirping, the wind blowing, or if I'm by myself, just listening to myself breathe, that presence allows me to stay in the moment and forces my mind to shut up, because it's the cameraman, it's the recorder in that business, and it can't participate until you allow it. And it's only when you go into your head does it have any say, does it have any impact on you. So just a little metaphor that's helpful on mindset and how to quiet the voice and how to take control of that. Now, it's particularly important, the last thought real quick, is during this COVID-19 problem, is that people worry about it, and the mind loves that. So the mind is going to sit there and just tell you over and over again how bad it is. And, oh, we're screwed and all this. Listen, you know, it is what it is. It's a bad situation. There's no better, no worse. My mind does not have to say that to me 100 or 1,000 times a day. So shut the F up. You know, let me go about my work. Okay, it's a problem. We're going to deal with it. I'm a great believer in American ingenuity. We're going to solve this. It's going to be a vaccine, or it's going to be whatever. There's going to be a solution to this. So that's I think it's fairly simple. I mean, you either solve it with listening and separation, or you just get tough with it. You're bigger than it. Don't take any crap from that little gray pinkish thing.
Right. Yeah. What are you feeding your mind? Right. What are you feeding your mind? What information?
Oh yeah. Be careful what you believe. Trust me. Be careful what you say to yourself. It's coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the more negative and the more emotional it is, man, the mind goes, ooh.
And
got you now.
Oh yeah. And the more you practice that listening, whether it's, you know, sounds, your breath, the more you practice that, the quieter the mind gets. And the mind is going to sneak back up, and it's going to get loud again. And I think there's an important piece of not judging yourself for that, right? So, you know, skillfully
that's right. Trust me, the mind is way too integrated. This is like, you know, this is a tough war to win. Your goal is to win more battles than you lose. And just try to basically take control of the territory. So, yeah.
Well, Steve, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time, and welcome to the Monster Chats community. Before we let you go, just tell people a little bit more about, you know, what sort of resources you have for them, or how they can connect with you or find you online.
Well, I'm out on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I have a channel on YouTube, which isn't, I need to be a little more active out there. But, you know, the website that pretty much describes what I do is simply called CoachSteveP.com. CoachSteveP for Pfrenzinger.com. There's also a website of StevePfrenzinger.com, but CoachSteveP.com pretty much explains what I do, and I essentially I run these assessments to help people become more self-aware, so that they can have that superpower that I discovered and that many people discover, which is self-awareness. And I do some one-on-one coaching. I've done that for many years, but that's a very it's a very small community of people that I do that for, but their openings do come up from time to time. But I like I said, learn, share, simplify. That's what I do. And I'm going to continue to write. I was thinking about doing either a blog or a podcast on this subject, because almost everybody I talk to has some amazing story, some epiphany they had. I discovered that this, whatever. I mean, a quick example, and I promise I'll wrap it up, is the founders of Instagram had originally started a location app called Bourbon, and it was a complete and total failure. It was too complex and too crazy. But they did spend the time to do some analysis. They went into it and discovered that there was a photo sharing feature in Bourbon that was getting some attention. And so they were able to explain that to their VC, who was not happy that they had crashed, but they agreed to stay with them, and they built a photo sharing app called Instagram. Wow. So that's feedback. There's a lot of feedback out there. Sometimes you just got to go looking for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Steve. Really appreciate it. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, share, and we're listening. We're open to your feedback. We look forward to hearing from you. That was not that we say that every time. So we want to hear good. Yeah, we want to hear your feedback. The show is all about you. So thanks again, Steve. Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Monster Chats, presented by Monster VoIP, where we share the tools, methods, and best practices that business leaders use to build new connections, strengthen relationships, and impact sales in organizations of all shapes and sizes. If you have any questions from today's show and want to reach us directly, please text your question to 424-378-6966.